Okay, guys, let's see if we can sneak up on them and catch them. I think they're up to something. I think they're up to no good. Let's see. We're sneaking up slow. Let's see. Yep, they're caught. You guys are busted. Any of you guys that have cats, you know that trying to keep cats off of your bed is like a losing battle. You won't win. These guys are no different. Marty and Fred are especially terrible about it. Buster, he goes and sleeps under the kitchen sink because it's warm under there. But these guys, they insist on sleeping on my bed. You see, with wifey not feeling well most of the time and having a hard time sleeping, I've been sleeping in the guest bed down in the guest bedroom in the basement. And these cats, I usually keep this door closed so they don't get in here. But since I've been sleeping in here, I've been opening the door, and they've decided this is their bed, not really mine. Kind of like my bench stool is not mine; it belongs to that one. Well, they've decided that it's okay to just lay on my bed and get cat hair all over it. So now I've got to vacuum the silly thing. Fred, what are you doing here, Fred? Fred, why are you here, Fred? Fred, can I have my bed back? Fred. I'm annoying him. He doesn't like that. Hi, Fred. Hi, Freddy boy. He's a big fat baby. See, it's hard not to like this guy. It's hard to be mad at him. He's such a baby. Hear him purring? What is it? And that one over there, he's just a troublemaker. He thinks he owns everything in this place. So I guess I get to sleep with the cats. That's just the way of the world, guys. If you have cats, you either sleep with them or you keep your bedroom door closed all the time, because that's just how it goes. All right, I guess I'll get back to work now. Good night, guys. Right down here, you see the bottom of the combination capacitor, the one that has 3 capacitors in it. On the schematic, that is, they are C19, C20, and C21. C19 being a 2 microfarad, C20 being a 6, and C21 being an 8. Now, I'm going to look at C21 first. That one is supposed to go all the way to the end of the CAN dome out here, which I've labeled E, both on the CAN dome and on the schematic. Comes out of this capacitor and goes to that point, and of course this capacitor, all the capacitors inside of it the negatives are connected to the CAN, and the CAN is grounded to the chassis. There's no insulating disc on this one. So really all I have to worry about is to get a replacement for this wire right here. I need to I need to put in an 8 microfarad capacitor that this wire goes to. So I'm going to clip it down here at the cap. And you can see right here I've installed a 10 microfarad capacitor because I don't have any 8s. I don't know that anybody does. And I'm going to go ahead and use that for the 8. I've installed it on the terminal strip. I will take this wire right here and attach it right here on the positive side of this cap. And the negative side I've already attached to ground right here. When I'm all done, I'm going to heat up this area around this ground lug, this mounting lug, and I'll put some solder on that to get that get a really good ground there. So let me go ahead and clip that wire, making sure I don't clip any other wires. That would be ugly. I've done that, by the way, lots of times. You get in there, you get excited, you start clipping away, and you clip the wrong wire, and then if it's in a hard spot, you got some problems. This one's in a hard spot, but all these wires are eventually going to be clipped. When I'm all done, this capacitor will just be a big empty spot there. You'll see the wax bottom of the cap, and that's it. Alright, I see a little bit of problem here. This is not going to reach there. Alright, I've got some nice reproduction stranded wire that'll work out just right. Same drill as the other one. First I want to get it attached at this end and soldered, and then I'll kind of route it to the other place, the other end. If I put it up here, it'll be out of the way because I might want to mount a capacitor under here later. So let me put it there. Next I want to take this, I want to remove the solder from the end of that can dome and install that wire. Boy, I'm getting awfully close on solder wick. I'm about to run out and I haven't ordered it yet. I better get to it. I've been so busy, man. There's a reason. I for a while had put up 2 or 3 videos a week, sometimes more, but I've been busy this last few months. I've mentioned it or hinted about it a few times. My wife is real sick, and her situation is terminal. And we're reaching a point now where she's in some pain and she has almost no energy. And she is the whole world to me. So right now radios just haven't taken priority. I still love radios and I still want to do videos, but I put wifey first. Wow, that's a solder mess. So I don't mention that little bit of information to you for a fact. There have been some new subscribers, quite a few actually, and I feel quite honored by that. And I want to thank every one of you that have subscribed. I'm glad you're here and welcome aboard. I hope that I can continue to put videos up that you find interesting. But I don't mention that bit of information about wifey. For a fact, I do it. I mention it because I want the subscribers to know that, you know, I'll be soon back to, I want the subscribers to know that at some point I'll be back to putting videos up pretty regularly. But it's going to be pretty spotty, probably through the winter and into the spring. Wifey and I have some dark times ahead, and I'm bracing for the storm. We can no longer make a decision that will change the outcome. So I see my role now as simply her support to help her get through something that she never thought she'd have to get through. At least never thought she'd have to get through at this point in her life, and before I went through it. I always assumed, and she did too, that she would survive me. And I don't know, I'm sure some of you out there have been through this very same thing and you know what I'm talking about. Elegant in its simplicity, that's what I always like to say. Simple designs are usually the best designs. The simplest way to approach any task is always the best way to approach that task. Just ask Dr. Porsche. Related to the original Volkswagen Beetle design. Now I'm going to go ahead and solder this end over here, but this end here at the ground I'm going to leave that unsoldered till I get the rest of the capacitors in, and then I'll solder it at the end. And if I seem to have forgotten to solder it at the end, would you remind me? Just give me a good shout and let me know, hey dummy, go fix that, you forgot to solder that ground. I got in those new tripods I was waiting for from Amazon, and man, do I like them. I know probably not very many of you out there are into photography, but if you are, you know how important something like a tripod that works properly is to you. And I have some nice tripods, but they just weren't really built to hold the kind of weight that my video rigs are putting on them. And so I needed to get one that is capable of it. My rigs each weigh about 18 pounds. My tripod was supposed to be good for up to about 10 pounds, the ones I had. And they're really beautiful tripods. There's nothing wrong with them. But the new ones, I bought 2 of them, one for each video rig. The new ones are capable of holding 28 pounds, I believe, is the spec. It's a beefy tripod. Now, 28 pounds doesn't sound like a lot until you start to think that you're putting it on a pan head, and a pan and tilt head. It's called a fluid head, and it takes quite a bit of metal to make that sturdy enough to hold 28 pounds, and still be able to tilt it so that it's cantilevered and puts a lot of force on that thing. So I'm real happy with it. My wife's coffee maker did not deliver. Real disappointed in that, because I had it on the way because of the Keurig we bought failed. We bought 2 of those Keurigs, and I don't know what all the excitement is about Keurig. I'll tell you, man, I like the idea of 1 cup at a time, because she doesn't drink that much coffee anymore. But those things, we bought one, it failed in a few days. Got a replacement from Amazon. It failed within a week. And I give it one chance. If it fails one time, I'll get a replacement for it. If it fails the second time, I'm done with it. So I said keep it, and I bought one made by Bunn instead, B-U-N-N. And I think it's going to be a nice machine, although I don't know if I'll ever get to find out. It was supposed to be here on Friday. It is now Sunday, and it has not shown up. They're telling me that it got lost in transit. So we'll see if the replacement that they said they sent out actually shows up on Monday like they say it will. At this point, I don't really believe much of what they're telling me. Okay, so now we got that one connected. That's that is C21. Let me go ahead and write that on the capacitor. I like to do that on some of them so that I can get my bearings real fast when I'm troubleshooting. C21. And this down here is C14. I only write it on the ones that are big enough to write on, but you write it on a few that'll help get you squared away where you are in the radio. Uh-oh, I made a mistake. I connected C21 to ground, and that sure isn't ground, guys. I don't know what I'm thinking. I better fix that right now. Okay, let me fix that, and I'll show you what I come up with. Well, I found another place to mount that. I just about committed the cardinal sin in that I didn't have the values showing. You have to look kind of at a funny angle to see it, but you can see the angles. I forgot until I was installing the thing. But I don't want to bend those leads too many times. Anybody out there seen the new Star Trek? I guess there's a new Star Trek series starting up. Anybody seen it? I'd love to know if it's any good. My son is a Star Trek fanatic, and so he'll love anything that's Star Trek. But I haven't had a chance to talk to him about it yet. Okay, next thing, I'm going to want to replace one of the remaining 2 capacitors. And I started out a few minutes ago before I discovered my error that I want to replace C19, which is a 2 microfarad. So the wire that comes from C19 is this kind of greenish yellowish thing, which I suspect was once green. Might have been yellow, but I don't know. That's attached here to this 1 watt resistor that I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and clip that, although I'm pretty sure it's not going to be long enough to reach this terminal strip. I'll just install a new wire there. I might just extend this one. As I mentioned earlier, I really don't want to heat up that resistor any more than I have to. It's got a good value now, but I'm not sure it will remain that way if I keep heating it up. So I will probably just extend this wire. Let me see if I can get that out of there so I can get my hands on it. Yeah, it's not going to be nearly long enough, but yet I don't want to horse with that terminal. So let's do that. Let's extend the wire, and I'll also need to go get a 2.2 microfarad 450 volt. Let me strip some insulation off the end of this guy. Actually, I'm going to need more than that. Okay, I'll do a quick little butt splice. I'll use some green wire here. Actually, let's find out. The one way to find out the color of a wire, if you're unsure, is to scrape off the outer surface and see what color it is underneath, because that'll usually tell you what color it was. And I'm seeing a hint of green in there. Yeah, that was green. Okay, well, I'll attach. There's apparently 2 green wires then coming out of this cap. So that was definitely green. Alright, I don't want to get carried away. Let me get that one set up, and then I'll show you how that one looks. Alright guys, I'm going to take a break from the work to show you where I'm at. Give you an idea how far we've gotten so far. I have replaced all of the electrolytics in the power supply, and it's kind of looks like a whole bunch of them here, but it's not too bad. These are 2 1s. They're identical capacitors. I have some 2.2 microfarads on order from Mauser. They've been on order for a bit, but I haven't gotten them yet, so I don't want to hold up this job. This is perfectly legitimate to use 2 1s to get the 2 that I want. The same is true right here. What I'm looking for is 6. It's supposed to be 6. What I have here is a 4.7 and then a 2 microfarad, which are not all that common. I get these from Just Radios. 2 microfarad and the 4.7 gives me 6.7. That's legitimate. That's a good capacitance. That'll be fine. These are not the same exact, capacitors, same brand. But I don't see any reason why this is going to be a problem. If they were vastly different in capacitance, I might see that'd be a problem, because then one of them would be taking more of the current than the other, I think. But with these being as close as they are, I think we're going to be okay. Right here I have a 12 microfarad capacitor. Okay, that is taking the place. That is C18. That was this one way down here. And then finally under here I've got a 10 in place of the 8 that's specified on the schemo. Again, that's not such a vast difference that it's going to cause a problem with the way the radio runs. So I think we'll be okay. So all the electrolytics are mounted, nice and firm on this this terminal strip here. I have also replaced some other capacitors, some film capacitors. This is that 0.2 that you saw. A great big capacitor was in here before, and some Panasonic films that are filling in here for the paper and wax that were there. This is kind of weird the way Zenith did this. They connected them mid-air. Really, it was either do this the way they did it, or put a terminal strip down here somewhere and maybe even mess with the wire dress then if I did that. So I decided to go with what Zenith did. These are short enough lengths that this is nice and rigid. I don't have to worry about it. There are a couple spots where I had to, run some wire to do the terminal strip instead of using the multi-capacitor can that's right here. I had to actually run a little bit longer wire, but I ran good heavy wire. It's going to be fine. I've replaced some resistors. I'm finding in this radio that most of the carbon comp resistors that are in there have drifted high, so I'm replacing most of them. And I'm going to move on next over here, and I'll work in this section over here, which is the first audio section. I'll get this capacitor replaced. There's a resistor here that'll probably be high at 1 meg. and I'll get these caps here replaced. So we'll just keep plugging along. I will measure all these dog bones. I usually replace dog bones, but when they're a little higher wattage, often they are okay. And so I might just leave those the way they are if they measure out all right. All right, I'll get back to work and I'll show you once I've got that stuff done. Okay guys, what you see here is I tested this 1 meg ohm resistor, and it turned out to be high. It read about 1.4 meg, and I need to take that out. It's about 40% high, so it's not good. So what I did here, I'm going to use what some people call the corkscrew method. I don't use it that often, but in this case it's appropriate because I really don't want to remove all these items here that don't need to be replaced. The whole idea of the corkscrew method is to be able to replace a component without removing its leads from the terminal. That can really be a help sometimes when you don't want to remove the other leads or even heat them up that are already in the terminal. And the mechanical connection is just as secure and legitimate as using the terminal itself, but I don't have to remove all this solder. I'm standing over the cats in my basement bathroom because I heard a ruckus in here and I wanted to know what was going on. And they banged into that water bowl that I keep down here for them and made a mess. And Marty just doesn't give up. First he bugs Buster till Buster wants to scream, and now he's bugging Fred. They have this thing they do when they're attacking each other. They like to bite at each other's paws. I don't quite get it, but that's what they do. Now Fred could easily just wail on Marty, but he's being kind. But I think he's losing patience with the little creep too. Because Marty just doesn't give up. Marty bugs and bugs and bugs. Oh! Yeah, Fred definitely has the weight advantage. Look at him biting the back paws. That's hilarious. Oh, Fred, you crack me up. You'll have to pardon my mess. This is not exactly a guest bathroom. This is just a kind of a roughed-in little bathroom that I have down in the basement for convenience. So it's not exactly luxurious. So please forgive the mess down here. Get him, Fred. Bite his feet. Don't bite your own foot, Fred. Ow! I thought I'd show you something real quick as I move through replacing all these caps. This lead right here, this red one, this wire comes off of a terminal that this 22K resistor is connected to, and this goes off to the tuning eye. Okay, this 22K goes off and is the little plate in the tuning eye. Well, you see what's happened here. Somebody soldered this on, but kind of didn't solder it on. We got broken strands on this wire right here, you can see. And the solder job is kind of globbed on there, and not a very good solder job. And if you remember right, this tuning eye didn't light very brightly. I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I have run into this before in a Zenith, where if you don't have perfect solder joints regarding the tuning eye doesn't work very well. So even though this resistor right here, the 22K, and this 1K right here are both good resistors, I measured them both and they're both right spot on. I'm going to have to take the solder out of this terminal right down here, strip a little bit of this wire, run it through there, and resolder it, because that's just not acceptable. Sometimes if you just heat the solder around a stranded wire and then you tug that wire out of there, it'll pull a lot of that waste solder out with it. And that's a good thing, because then you don't have to soak up so much with your expensive solder braid. Alright, so look at the nasty condition of that wire. There's some definitely some broken strands and just a little bit of the wire, and the solder was not in good shape on it. Let me move that out of the way for the moment. Ow. Soldering irons are hot, guys. You want to kind of remember that before you go swinging it around and nailing yourself on the hand. Alright, so let me try and get the remaining broken strands out of there. Go ahead and soak the solder out. Okay, there we go. You don't want to get that resistor too hot since I'm going to use it. Now I'm going to deal with this nasty wire. No big deal. Strip some insulation off of it. Insulation's a little bit brittle, but not terrible. I'll take this wire and just reinsert it into the same terminal it was in, and do the resoldering thing. I'm not saying this will fix the problem with the tuning eye with it being dim. I still suspect that the tuning eye is tired, but at least I can rest easy knowing this part is done. Dealing with the Renegade strands is the principal reason I can't stand to work with stranded wire, and I avoid it whenever I can. But, you know, it's got its uses. When you have places where there's going to be vibration or any kind of movement, you got to use stranded wire. But I still hate working with it. I'd have been on to the next task had this been a solid wire. And I can tin it, but the solder, after you tin it, it makes it brittle, and they tend to want to break off unless you get it right the very first time. So I usually don't do that. Okay, there we go. And we'll see when we fire this radio up just how that tuning eye works. Won't know much till then. Okay guys, let's take a look at where I'm at on this chassis now. Actually, I've gotten pretty much all of the electronics done. There's a couple things I want to do. I want to put a little bit of, just a little dab of some glue and set this capacitor against that chassis wall so it doesn't wiggle around. These are nice and tight here. This is nice and tight. All these others are tight. This really is the only one that I need to do that with. It's always a good idea to go through all of the work you did after you're done and make sure that everything is secure, because this being able to move like that, sooner or later those leads will break and the thing will come out. I've replaced all the electrolytics. They're all in this terminal strip, and actually lead length is a lot shorter doing it this way versus rebuilding this can, restuffing this can, and then keeping those long wires. So, because a lot of those wires went right up here to the can dome. You remember there was some question about whether this can dome was good, but certainly when I took everything off of it, it measured out perfectly. So I decided to leave it. Let's see, this electrolytic here, I replaced it, but I kept the positive terminal of it, just the positive, as like a sort of mini terminal strip. It's a convenient way to leave things connected where they were and yet move the capacitor. So I did run a wire from here over to the capacitor right here. This is the one, C18. And as long as the ground is not connected to anything, then this is really not a capacitor, it's just a terminal, because there's no way for it to have capacitance. All these nice little Panasonic chiclet caps, they're real good film caps, I like those. I've installed those, replaced most of the resistors. All these carbon comps are all new. There's a couple of metal film resistors in there, mostly because they were the right wattage or a little higher wattage and the right value. and they're what I had, so that works fine. I never use the newer, more modern ones in real high voltage situations because I don't really know what they're rated at, whereas I know the carbon comps are rated pretty high on voltage. Surprisingly, 3 of the dog bones were still fine. They measured perfectly. The dog bones I will not leave in place unless they measure within about 5% of their stated value, because I just don't trust them. They're beautiful, they're cute as heck, but I don't trust them. Of course, all the mica caps I left in place. I think they're good. I tested all the transformers again while I had things apart. They're all in good shape. I have yet to clean the switches and the pots, and I have yet to mount this guy right here, and that's only because I haven't had a chance yet to go through it and clean it and make sure it's good. I think it's going to be fine. It actually turns really freely, but I want to clean it, clean the little dust bunnies out of that area in there, as long as I have it out. And these, I've done a lot of these, and I've never run into one that was bad. So they're pretty stout. I will have to replace the little belt. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount this in place, then I'll make an O-ring belt right here in position on the chassis. I've got some O-ring round stock, and I'll use that. Okay, Marty, come on, get out of there. I get this stuff at Amazon, and this is just some O-ring stock. It's natural, it's rubber, just like any other O-ring. And I got it in 3 sizes. Only one. This is the only size that has arrived so far. It's actually, I'm going to use a bigger size to make this ring. But if you use some super glue, and I use the gel, and I actually will run this thing in position, pull it a little tight, and then glue it, because it only takes about a minute of holding it in place for it to work, and they work great. So that's a good way to go. I think I paid about 15 bucks. There's 75 feet of this here, and if I'm careful with it, this will last me a long time. I ran all new wires here. These wires here go out to the I-tube socket. They will go out to the I-tube socket. I haven't wired that socket up yet, but I plucked all the wires out and marked them. And then when I flip the chassis over, I'll go ahead and connect them up to this socket. If I have a little cap that goes on the back side of this socket, great, I'll use it. I don't know that I have any extra, and to be honest with you, they're a little hard to find, and even if I have 1 or 2, I'll probably want to keep them. I've got to replace a little 1 meg right here, a little quarter water. These are always bad. Always replace those. Always. Remember, the eye lit, but it was dim. So, okay, so what I'm going to do right now is flip this baby over, and we'll get to work on the top side. I'm pretty much done with all the stuff I can do here at this point. I want to have the top side stuff done, all the circuitry done, tone control, things like that. And then I can get onto the shutter dial. Before I do that, and I'm not going to put it in the video because I've done it before. I'm going to install a fuse holder, and I always like to keep it really close to where the power comes in. If you look at the chassis, right here is a hole. That hole is about the right size. Maybe it's a little small. I try not to do anything as far as drilling on these goes. So if that hole is too small, then I'll just use some of these holes here, and I'll mount a fuse holder that goes inside the chassis. I may even mount it outside. I don't know. I haven't figured all that out yet. Every radio is a little different, but it's nice to have options. So I'm going to put the fuse holder in. I need to put some safety caps in there. And then I'll measure voltages before I decide whether or not to put a dropping resistor in. So let me get this thing turned over, and we will get to work on finishing all of the cap and resistor replacement on the top side. And you can see this tone control is pretty gnarly, so I've got to clean that up. The wires are okay. They're they're not even that stiff, so these wires are all right. I'll leave those be. I'll clean up these, but they're in good shape. They're not fraying or anything. There's no reason to replace any wire on these little tube grid cap connectors, because they're not fraying. If they were coming apart, then I'd replace them. And I'll take this apart. I'm going to replace these 3 grommets. So all of that is coming up. Let me get started on things, and I think the first thing I'm going to do is get to these grommets, okay? And I'll get to working on the clockwork for this tuner as well. All right, kids, we're going to end this video now. It's running a little bit long, and I'm running the risk of boring everybody to death. The next video, we're going to pick up where I can have a chance to show you what I've done so far and what direction we're going with on this chassis. In the meantime, you can go ahead, if you're working on one like this, and just go to town replacing caps, checking those resistors, replacing resistors, and just being real careful to do one piece at a time. That's the best way to avoid mistakes. So we'll be hitting this again soon. I'll be uploading videos a little more often now, and hopefully we can get this series done pretty quickly. I've already done all the video recording. I just need to get it uploaded, edited and uploaded. So from your western outpost in beautiful Nephi City, Utah, in Juab County, this is Michael. That's all for now.